I told my husband, if you love me, you'll convert. He stared at the papers on our kitchen table and whispered, you're scaring me. Then he packed a bag. So I signed something else before he. At the time, I thought I was saving my marriage. My husband, James, didn't yell when I pushed the papers toward him. That would have been easier. Anger would have given me something to fight. Instead, he looked at the first page, then the second, and his face changed like he was realizing I had become someone he didn't recognize. Emily, he said quietly, what is this? I told him it was a marriage covenant. That made it sound sacred instead of desperate. It said James would start attending church with me every week, meet with the pastor, read the books I chose, and commit to conversion before our anniversary. I had printed 2 copies. One for him to sign, one for me to keep. He didn't touch the pen. Are you asking me, he said, or telling me? I said, I'm telling you what I need. He nodded slowly. And if I don't sign it? My mouth went dry, but I had rehearsed the answer all day. I don't think I can stay married to someone who won't walk the same path as me. James leaned back like I had pushed him. So this is an ultimatum. I told him it was a boundary. He shook his head. A boundary is what you do with yourself. This is you trying to control what I believe. I hated that he said it so calmly. I hated it more because some part of me knew he was right. A few months before that night, my life had started falling apart in quiet ways. I lost steady work, and at first I acted like it was fine. I told James it might be a blessing. I said I could rest, apply for better jobs, organize the house, maybe finally start over. For 2 weeks, I believed that. Then the silence got heavy. James worked long hours, so I was alone most days. I refreshed my email constantly. I applied for jobs and heard nothing back. I woke up at strange hours with my chest tight, convinced something bad was coming, and I was the only one who could feel it. I didn't tell James how bad it was. When he came home tired, I smiled too hard and said I was okay. After he fell asleep, I cried in the bathroom with the door locked. That was when I started watching videos online. At first, they helped. Women talked about rebuilding their lives, finding purpose, praying through fear, becoming stronger after loss. I needed that. I needed my fear to mean something. Then the videos changed. They became sharper. Wives talked about saving their husbands. People said a marriage without shared faith was unstable. Some said confusion, anxiety, and depression were signs of spiritual attack. The more afraid I felt, the more certain those strangers sounded. I had always believed in God, but quietly. James wasn't religious, but he respected that part of me. He came with me on holidays when I asked. He bowed his head when my mother prayed before dinner. He never mocked me. That used to be enough. Then respect started feeling like rejection. I asked him to come to church with me. He came twice. He sat beside me, listened politely, and held my hand afterward. But I could tell he didn't feel what I felt. He wasn't moved. He wasn't changed. Instead of accepting his honesty, I treated it like betrayal. I sent him videos while he was at work. Then articles. Then screenshots of comments from strangers saying a husband should lead his wife spiritually. I left notes on the counter. I bought him a book and put it on his nightstand. When he didn't read it fast enough, I asked why he was resisting. He said, I'm not resisting you. I just don't want to fake something this important. That should have stopped me. It didn't. I told myself he was stubborn. I told myself he loved comfort more than truth. Every calm answer from him became proof, in my mind, that he didn't care enough. Then I started talking to Stephanie. She was an older woman from church who always seemed certain. When I told her I was scared my marriage was spiritually uneven, she held my hands and said, sometimes love means standing firm. I heard that exactly how I wanted to hear it. She didn't tell me to divorce James directly. It was more subtle than that. She said a man who truly loved his wife would want to walk with her. She said I couldn't build a home on sand. She said compromise could become disobedience if I wasn't careful. I was lonely enough to mistake pressure for wisdom. So I made the papers. I spent an afternoon typing rules for my husband like I was creating a contract. Church attendance, reading schedule, meetings with a pastor, a promise to pursue conversion. I remember feeling powerful when I printed them. That should have scared me. When James came home, I told him we needed to talk. He looked exhausted, but he sat down anyway. He always did. That was one of the good things about him. He didn't run from hard conversations until I turned every conversation into a test. I pushed the papers toward him and watched his face change. He asked if I understood what I was doing. I said I did. Then I said the sentence I still wish I could take back. If you love me, you'll convert. The room went still. James looked at me for a long time. You're scaring me. Because I want a husband who shares my faith? No, he said. Because you're asking me to lie so you won't leave. I wanted to argue, but he stood up. He didn't throw the papers or insult me. He walked into the bedroom, packed a bag, and came back with his phone in his hand. That was when I panicked. Where are you going? To Melissa's. His sister. I followed him to the door, crying. I told him he was abandoning me. I said he was proving everything I was afraid of. I asked how he could leave when I was clearly struggling. He stopped with his hand on the doorknob. I love you, he said. But I can't be forced into faith like it's rent. Then he left. For the first hour, I was furious. I walked around the kitchen with the papers still on the table, telling myself he was selfish. Then I called my mother. She listened while I cried, but she didn't say what I wanted. Honey, she said, asking someone to believe on command isn't faith. I ended the call because it felt like betrayal. Then I called Stephanie. She told me to pray and not weaken. She said James might be resisting because he felt convicted. She said I had to stand firm if I wanted my marriage to be built right. I clung to that because it made me feel less guilty. That night, I barely slept. I sent James long messages. At first, I explained. Then I apologized. Then I took the apology back. I told him I loved him, then told him he was choosing pride over me. He answered the next morning. I'm safe. I need space. Please stop sending messages like this. I read that and felt rejected all over again. So I sent more. For 4 days, I spiraled. I cleaned the same rooms again and again. I watched more videos. I wrote down sermon notes. I convinced myself James's silence was proof that he cared more about being right than being married. Melissa texted me once. Emily, I care about you, but you need to stop pressuring him. He is not okay. I wrote back something cruel about her not understanding marriage. She didn't respond. Later, I found out James had shown her some of my messages because he didn't know what else to do. At the time, I felt humiliated. Now I understand why he needed someone else to see what was happening. On the 4th evening, James came home. I heard his key in the lock and ran to the hallway. I expected him to soften when he saw me. I expected him to admit he missed me, promise to try, and make the fear in my chest go quiet. Instead, he looked careful. That hurt more than anger. He set his bag down and said, "We need to talk, but I'm not discussing conversion tonight." I crossed my arms. So you came back to reject me again? I came back because I love you. But I talked to a counselor through work. The word counselor made my face burn. I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were. You think this is all in my head. No. I think you're scared, and you're turning that fear into rules for me. I hated how calm he was. Calm made him sound reasonable, and I didn't want him to be reasonable. I wanted him to be wrong. He said he was willing to go to marriage counseling. He said he would support my faith. He would come to church sometimes if it wasn't treated like a test. But he would not sign anything. He would not promise to convert. He would not pretend. I told him that wasn't enough. His face changed. Then I don't know what you want from me, he said. I want you to choose me. I am choosing you. I'm just not agreeing to disappear. That sentence made me snap. I told him he was weak. I said he cared more about being stubborn than keeping his wife. I accused him of making me feel alone on purpose. I said if he left, it would prove he never really loved me. James sat down on the couch, put his face in his hands, and cried. For a second, the truth broke through my anger. I was hurting him, not guiding him, not saving him, hurting him. But I wasn't ready to admit it. So I went to bed angry and left him in the living room. The next week felt like living beside a closed door. James stayed in the house, but he felt far away. He still paid bills. He still asked if I had eaten. He still did the small practical things that made him James. But he didn't reach for me the same way. He didn't joke in the kitchen. He didn't kiss me without hesitation. I told myself he was punishing me. Really, he was protecting himself. I tried to fix it by pushing again. I suggested we meet with a pastor. James said he would meet with a licensed counselor, not someone whose goal was to convert him. I acted like that was an insult. He said it was a boundary. I hated that word by then. Then I crashed. It started with not sleeping. One night became 2. I told myself I was focused, maybe even spiritually alert, but my thoughts were moving too fast. I cleaned before sunrise. I reorganized drawers. I wrote pages of plans for our marriage, our future, our finances, our church life. Every plan required James to become someone else. I called him at work again and again because I felt certain something was wrong. When he finally answered, his voice was tight. Emily, I'm working. What happened? I just need to know you're okay. I'm okay. But are you coming home? Yes. Promise? He went quiet. I'll come home. But you need help. I hung up on him. When James came home that evening, he found me sitting on the kitchen floor with papers spread around me. Not just the covenant. Lists. Notes. Schedules. Half-written letters to him. I had been crying so long I didn't remember when I started. He crouched near me, not too close. Emily, he said gently, this can't continue. For once, I didn't argue. I looked at the papers around me and finally saw how desperate it all looked. I didn't look faithful. I looked terrified. I don't know how to stop, I said. His face softened, but he still looked guarded. We'll call someone, he said. Tonight. I agreed. Those were the papers I signed before he came home fully. Not another demand for him. Intake forms. Consent forms. A plan to get help. It wasn't dramatic. It was embarrassing. I had to write my name on a clipboard with shaking hands and admit that fear had swallowed my judgment. The doctor I saw didn't let me hide behind pretty words. When I said I had been trying to protect my marriage, she asked from what? I said, from being spiritually divided. She asked, what were you afraid would happen if your husband never converted? I didn't have a clean answer. Because the truth was ugly. I was afraid I had lost my value. I was afraid James would get tired of carrying me. I was afraid my life had no direction. I was afraid that if I couldn't control my future, I needed to control something. So I chose him. That realization didn't fix me. It made me ashamed. But shame was more honest than calling myself brave for giving my husband an ultimatum. James and I started counseling after that. The first sessions were hard because they were quiet and honest. He told me every conversation had started feeling like a test. He said he was afraid to speak because anything he said could become proof that he didn't care. He said my love had begun to feel conditional. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain the fear, the loneliness, the videos, Stephanie's advice, the pressure in my chest that never seemed to leave. But explanations were not repairs. I apologized to James in counseling because I needed someone there to keep me honest. I told him I was sorry for trying to force belief out of him. I was sorry for using divorce like a threat. I was sorry for making him responsible for my peace. He listened. He didn't forgive me right away. That hurt, but it was fair. At home, I threw away the covenant papers. I deleted the videos. I stopped calling Stephanie. When she texted to ask if I was still standing firm, I wrote back, I'm trying to stand honestly now, then blocked her because I knew her certainty was dangerous for me. My mother came over with groceries a few days later. She didn't lecture me. She put soup in the fridge, hugged me, and said, you don't have to be powerful every second to be loved. I cried harder than I expected. James moved back into our bedroom after a while, but not because everything was fixed. He told me he wanted to try, but things had to change. No more tests. No more spiritual scorekeeping. No more threats. If I felt scared, I had to say I was scared instead of turning it into a demand. I agreed. Keeping that promise was harder than making it. There were moments when I wanted to ask if he had thought more about faith. Moments when church made me emotional and I wanted him to feel it too. Moments when fear told me love was only safe if it looked exactly how I wanted. I learned to pause. Sometimes I failed, but I started catching myself. James noticed too. When I got quiet, he would ask, are you upset with me or are you scared? Most of the time, I was scared. The controversial part is that I still believe. I still pray. I still go to church sometimes. I still want a life grounded in faith. I don't think that desire is wrong. What was wrong was turning that desire into a weapon. James never converted. He also never mocked me. He never told me to stop believing. He only asked me to stop making his love conditional on becoming a copy of me. A few weeks ago, we were sitting in the car after counseling. The session had been quiet, but heavy. I had apologized again for the night with the papers, not because repeating sorry would fix it, but because I finally understood another piece of what I had done. James stared through the windshield for a while. I love you, he said. But part of me is still waiting for the next version of me that won't be enough. Before, I would have cried in a way that made him comfort me. I would have turned his hurt into my pain. This time, I let his words sit. Then I said, I understand why you feel that way. He reached for my hand after a minute. Not like everything was healed, but enough to remind me we were still there. That is where we are now. Not fixed. Not ruined. Somewhere in the middle, where love still exists, but trust has to be rebuilt without shortcuts. I keep thinking about the woman I was at that kitchen table. She thought she was brave. She thought she was drawing a righteous line. She thought she was asking her husband to choose faith. Really, she was asking him to lose himself so she wouldn't have to face her own fear. I signed the wrong papers first. Then I signed the right ones. Now I'm trying to become safe enough for the man I almost pushed away to believe me when I say I choose him too. Was I completely wrong for giving my husband that ultimatum, even though I truly believed our marriage depended on it? Or is wanting shared faith in a marriage something people should be allowed to demand?